Party people, what's happening with you? Welcome back. It's a brand new episode. It's a fresh week, fresh conversation. It's gonna be a good time. I'm hearing myself, but it's okay. It's so good to see y'all, man. I know I was hearing myself through the YouTube. I'm all good now, man. This is gonna be a phenomenal conversation. Okay, this week it's gonna be a little bit of a trigger warning. You might wanna hide your kids, hide your wife, and X, Y, and Z, all that other good stuff. It's going to be a really, really hot conversation, and I'm excited for it. And I hope you guys are too. Listen, if you're new, okay, D is going to be with us here in just a few moments. It's your boy Grape, aka Coach Sean, in the building. And man, we are in the business of getting to truth. Okay, we're having all kinds of conversations. If you missed last week's, in any week prior to, that's definitely giving you good context what to expect tonight. But of course, we're coming from a biblical worldview. But if you don't share the same worldview, that doesn't mean you don't have a place at the table to have some conversation with us, because we want to hear how you think, how you arrived at where you're at, and ultimately just having good conversation all around the table, you, me, and the crew. Okay, so we're excited. You could have spent your time anywhere else and you chose to be here. For that, we are grateful. If you were here last week, all right, we do have some homework, and we're gonna be, kind of switching up the flow a little bit of the homework moving forward. I know we've been used to doing the readings, and the readings have been really good, and we're gonna start kind of adding a little bit more to it, man. At least that's what I'm expecting coming to the end of this conversation. And so if you were here with us last week, definitely would love to hear your thoughts as we were reading through the book of Jeremiah. And if you're not with us in the reading, you definitely can just give us whatever it is that you've been studying, you've been thinking on, you've been reading, what's been on your mind. Drop it in the chat, man. We want to engage with you. We want to have some conversation with you. We want to connect with you, man, prior to this stream kicking off. All right. So shout out to Twitch in the building, YouTube chat. What's happening with you? It is so good to see you. It is so good to see you, everybody in the Maverick.tv land. That is where a lot of people are at. And if you guys want to be a part of that, you definitely can grab your free membership while we're going live. We're live the whole time, of course, as typical on YouTube and Twitch. You guys, man, we got so many people over there who are willing to give you so much exclusive content going down on the daily, on the weekly over there, that you are not going to catch on YouTube, so on and so forth, man. So we would love for you to be a part of that. And man, I'm done rambling. Let's pray into this. Kick it to a video. Get your notepad, get your pencils, take notes, get your Bibles, get your YouVersion, get you a nice drink, some popcorn, enjoy some good content, but more importantly, good conversation. And we're excited to have your participation with us here tonight. All right, so let's pray and dive into this. Lord, we love you. We thank you so much for this opportunity this week to come together and just have more conversation. Hopefully, Lord, opening our hearts and minds to get closer to you. Lord, we just pray that we lay all of our issues, all of our problems, all of our struggles, that we just come in together looking to connect and walk away different than the way we came into this stream. So we ask for your wisdom and your presence in this time. In Jesus' name, amen.
Maverick fam, how's it going? How's your mama? Your boy Dion here. On behalf of myself, PD, Grape, and Luke, welcome to the Truth Project. Now our goal here is very simple. Every week it's just a conversation around truth, hoping to get a little bit closer. We don't claim to have it. We're just on a journey just like you. And today's conversation is all about idols. Now, that's not like a typical word, right? Like idolatry is not just going off in the group chat. So it's something we have an idea of, but we're not very confident in our understanding and usually even less confident in our execution of not allowing idols to fall into our life. Just like last week, if you use exclamation notes in the chat, all right, that's going to drop the study notes for today. You could kind of follow along. I'll be touching on the notes a little bit, but there's a lot more information that I'm not going to take the time to unpack. And so if you want access to that, again, doesn't matter if you're on Maverick.tv, Twitch, or YouTube, exclamation ninja, and we'll drop that for you. We don't have it all automatic on Maverick.tv, but we'll see it and then we'll drop it for you. Very simply put, idolatry, it's anything that you prioritize over God. Now, in the Old Testament, we see a lot of stories of this where it's, they're creating golden calves, right? Taking gold, melting it down, making it into an image of a calf, or maybe they're creating objects out of stone or wood, and they're worshiping these idols. Or maybe even men, as they may look at them as if they're gods, and these kings as if they are God-like. Sometimes we can just let it stay there and think that it's not something that we don't really experience today. Now, I have a video I want to play that I think highlights this perfectly. 2 warnings on there. One, a little bit of a trigger warning, because it's coming for some of the things that you love most. If it does offend you, just sit in it for a little bit. Maybe I can ease some of those pains after the video, but if it is triggering something, that could be good. And then secondly, this video is old as fluff. I feel like I remember it from like 10 years ago. I found a version of it on YouTube that's 7 years old. It don't even fit the full screen. It's going to be grainy, but still, just pay attention. You'll be able to see enough and hear it enough to know what's going on. And let's be real, some of y'all be ripping them UFC fights for free, and those are janky, and you be watching those just fine. All right, so same thing here. And then when we come back from the video, I'll have a few thoughts, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
I was watching TV the other day, and this show comes on with these religious fanatics, and they were crazy. Well, you would think they were crazy if you didn't understand their culture and their religion. See, that's just the thing. See, they were worshipers of idols. And they took things to extremes. They painted their bodies, they wore these ridiculous costumes, they chanted, they danced, they even made sacrifices to their idols. But they had built these enormous temples to worship their idols in. It seems like their entire existence climaxed into this one scenario, this one over-the-top act of worship. You don't really relate, do you? Let's try it again. I was watching TV the other day, and this show comes on with these religious fanatics, and they were crazy. Well, you would think they were crazy if you didn't understand their culture and their religion. See, that's just the thing. See, they were worshipers of idols. And they took things to extremes. They painted their bodies, they wore these ridiculous costumes, they chanted, they danced, they even made sacrifices to the idols. But they had built these enormous temples to worship their idols in. It seems like their entire existence climaxed into this one scenario, this one over-the-top act of worship. You don't really relate, do you? Let's try it again. I was watching TV the other day, and this show comes on with these religious fanatics, and they were crazy. Well, you would think they were crazy if you didn't understand their culture and their religion. See, that's just the thing. See, they were worshipers of idols. And they took things to extremes. They painted their bodies. They wore these ridiculous costumes. They chanted. They danced. They even made sacrifices to the idols. But they had built these enormous temples to worship their idols in. It seems like their entire existence climaxed into this one scenario, this one over-the-top act of worship. Idol worship. It's not only golden calves anymore.
I love that video. Okay, now it does a few things. At first you think, okay, they're showing a little tribal stuff like, yeah, how could they? Then they bring it to your front door. And for some of us, right, it's sports. Others, it's video games. It could be your career, whatever it may be. But then I love it. It took it a step further and it brought it within the church walls. And it shows that some of us aren't even truly chasing, worshiping, thirsty for God. We're just looking for a fix to our selfishness. And God is a means to an end for us to try to get what we want selfishly. And even when you approach God like that, right, that's how you end up idolizing your pastor. And we see that with some of the fallen pastors. It's like, man, you didn't even really have a heart for the message that he brought. He was the superstar that you loved. Okay. And in this world of the influencer and the celebrity, it's so easy to think you're chasing God, but you're more so chasing like a cool group and sometimes what feels like a safer version of what you were just looking for from the world. And what I mean by that is sometimes we know we're chasing certain things that we know or sometimes we go about getting these certain highs in our life, all right, and these ways of feeling meaningful and significant, and we do it in unhealthy ways, and we know they're bad, but then we go to church and we're still doing the same thing but under what feels like a safe path. And so we're going to church, but it's more about attendance and how we look and not trying to really humble ourselves and draw closer to God. You know, where we got our hands up in worship, but we're really worried about what people think and how we look and how we sound, right? And we're volunteering for the groups and all the meetups, and we're always busy, always at the church, not because we have a genuine heart for it, but we're trying to force God's hand because we're like, God, look at what I'm doing. Look at all these holy points. I could be dead smack in the middle of the church every day and still be missing God. And I love that. I think that video just lays that out perfectly without just fully saying it. And I want to be clear. I don't think the video is saying that you can't have nice things. Doesn't mean you can't go to a football game, right? It just means the football, you can have football just can't have you. All right. You can go there and you shouldn't be having to go to the football game to get filled up. All right. God wants to fill you up. And then you take that fullness wherever that may be, right? To the football game, to the bowling alley, to wherever it may be. But you're not idolizing that thing and you need it to fill you up and it is your God. So that's a brief intro for our conversation on idolatry. I'll throw it to you guys by asking if you think through your life, right? The different dimensions like faith, your relationships, your mental, physical health, think through your finances. What areas do you see any idols? Like, and what is the biggest one that you can spot? Being as vulnerable as possible. What is the biggest idol you can spot in your life? Share that below and we'll start the conversation.
Man, that's a good one. That's a good one. That's a good one for me to watch that off rip, man. I'm excited. This definitely goes far and wide. So hold on to your seats because this is about to get wild. So, D, man, open the floor, man. This is all you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Appreciate everybody being here. Again, if you're just tuning in, use exclamation notes in the chat and you can see, the outline for our conversation. Now, I just added some things I had forgot. I added some questions at the end, more like study/reflection questions for all of us that I think are powerful. just to help you think through, because idolatry is, like I mentioned in the video, it's something that I think flies under the radar. We usually think we're not as bad at it as we might be. And I'd love to get, for those that are here, some conversation going on what you think areas that you might struggle. Because there's the obvious ones, but I think it could be so subtle in ways too. And I feel like I got so many areas where I could improve. I was struggling to find like maybe the number one. It has to be somewhere, I think, around like emotions. And that can be kind of deep. You may not think that you idolize and cling to certain emotions and comforts. Sometimes we always think it might got to be like LeBron James or like money that you idolize, but and often when I think of idols, I think of just a means to an end, right? So if you were worshiping a fertility idol back in the day, it's because you looking for maybe it's fertile crops, fertile offspring. You could be looking for money. There's gods of war. You could be looking for revenge, and it's all of these things that you would go to and worship to feel a certain way on the inside, to fill you up. Again, same reason we might go to these football games or video games, and it's not being okay with being not okay for a little bit and just wrestling with some of that stuff. I think just leaves our hearts so vulnerable to these different idols out there. And so for me, it has to be some sort of like comfort, or even if I had to try to quantify it into like something physical, maybe like workaholicness and here's what we got. I think we can do so many things with good intentions, but still be off a little bit with them. And again, for me, I don't feel maybe like any kind of weird sense of identity that goes into my work, which I have felt in the past. I just genuinely like helping people, man. I like doing that. I like being in the trenches with people. But I think we even have to be careful with how we do it, because it can still become an idol where you place that above God. And I can want something for someone so much that now they're on my timing and my pace and how I want them to change, when I want them to change. And we can feel so righteous in doing it. But these are slight little subtle forms of idolatry that keep us from experiencing God at the highest level. And so that's why I think it's important for us to talk about it. I want to see what you guys are struggling with, and I'll leave it there.
Yeah, that's probably the quickest opening I think we've ever had.
Yeah.
So I love it. I can relate, man. I think I'm just kind of sitting here thinking for my own exposure in that area, man. Workaholic is up there. And it's not even necessarily because I feel kind of similar to what you were saying. Like, it's not that my identity is in it. I knew who I was and what I'm filled with prior to me even having any of this. I think it's just more of knowing that I'm leaving an impact on people's lives. And so sometimes I don't feel good about the work I've done until I've done so much of it. Sometimes, right. You know what I'm saying? And so, I can remember, I think I might have mentioned it a few True projects ago. Like, I was, just doing my morning study. I think I was reading through the book of Mark at the time, and Jesus was using an example of just basically a farmer not knowing when a seed that he plants grows. He says he sows and he waters night and day. He goes to bed at night. He wakes up in the morning, but he doesn't know how it grows. He just knows that it ends up he sees the results over time. Just paraphrasing there. I'm sure I'll find the verse at some point, but that screamed to me, get to bed. You doing all this work, man. You don't really know. Like, it's crazy. We can all know the metrics. It's not that we have to be blind to certain things on how things are growing, what we can do better to adjust to see more results, better results. But at the end of the day, I'm still always reminded of 1 Samuel chapter 2 when Hannah gives praises to God and she says, the Lord lifts up and he tears down. She says he makes the rich and the poor. I gotta find it. See, I'm all over the place. Let me find it, because this is one scripture that is really powerful to me. This is her prayer. It's verse 7. The Lord sends poverty and wealth. He humbles and he exalts. Okay. And so that right there, to me, says so much, because at the end of the day, man, God is the one doing the lifting. God is the one doing all that. And so no matter how much you work, it's not to say that your work isn't important, but there has to be a balance. And that's kind of in a groove of what I'm learning every day to find. And that's just one area. You know what I'm saying? If you don't think that, I think my biggest thing is to maybe, in this conversation, is to get everybody to see that you actually have not just the capacity to have an idol. But as the video mentioned, it's not just the golden calves and the statues and all that kind of stuff. Like you actually have more than one, if you actually really think about it, or it's closer to being an idol than you realize. Again, some of us know Kendrick Lamar's "They Not Like Us" more than we know scripture.
Right.
Like, so where does that fall? Right. When we talk about football, when we talk about basketball, man, I can tell you, I used to be that guy that used to come to the table and have so much stats on why LeBron ain't the GOAT. Like, I just had it down pat. I couldn't tell you one Bible verse from my heart, though. I couldn't do it. Maybe it's not even necessarily sports related, but man, addictions, idols. Think of the posture of idolatry in scripture. There's always this format of bowing down. There's this format. So what are you bowing to? You know what I'm saying? What are you bowing to every day? Is it getting on the websites, looking at the pornography, right? What is it? Is it the social media, the status, having the meta check next to your name on Instagram and trying to make sure you capsize on followers? How many likes your videos are getting every day and trying to top that. Like, what is it, man, that has really gripped your heart? You say you're free. But your mind is in the greatest prison that perhaps you've ever experienced and established, man. There are people who are in legitimate prisons who are more free than you are, and you're not in chains. So it's like, how do we navigate this, right? And so I think my biggest, earlier on, my biggest mission is not only to find it within me, all the different areas that could potentially lead to idol worship, but also wanting all of us to come to that place where we're like, man, like that's really prevalent. That's actually more present in my life than I thought. And not necessarily to go to the opposite extreme and toss everything out the window. God, my house, I got to get rid of it. My cars, right, I got to sell it. It's more like, okay, well, what is it that I'm feeling this is filling for me? You know what I mean? Like, what is it that I'm actually after? And why don't I feel that Jesus is enough?
Right.
In those aspects, man. I'm reminded of, this is the last passage I'll open up with, and we can definitely get to comments, questions. You guys be sure to drop your questions in the chat. And any other thoughts, man, we're going to dive all into this. But Jesus talks about, I believe, it's Mark. Is it Mark? Man, woman at the well. Is that John 8, I think, is it? Let me find it.
I hope you find it.
Yeah, John. I think it's John 4 or John 8, one of the two.
John 4 on mine. Yep.
Is it John 4? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So this is so powerful to me. As we all are familiar with this text, he meets a woman at the well. Of course, in this context, she's a Samaritan. He's a Jew. Samaritans and Jew don't get along in this context. In fact, culturally, Jesus has no business speaking to this woman. This woman has no business speaking to Jesus. And yet here they are at a fountain, or at a well rather. And he just sparks up conversation. This is how dope Jesus is. And he opens up, when the Samaritan woman came to draw water, verse 7, Jesus said to her, will you give me a drink? His disciples went down into town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, you are a Jew. I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink? Jesus answered her, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. He continues on. And then verse 13, he says this, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. It is amazing to me, man, how many times I've reflected on this chapter, reflected on this verse, reflected on how much I have aimed to show other people just how much God loves them, and at the same time have not given myself the same room and capacity to receive the love I'm telling others to receive. It blew my mind when I was really caught up in an early pursuit that I had, and I was really bothered by the fact of the first disconnect that we experienced, man. And I was sitting at the edge of my bed at this time. I think D had just gave out 1 Corinthians 13 for all of the members in the coaching group, man. And so I had just started writing it out, and I was just thinking for a second. I was reading through that. I was like, bro, oh man, I was like, oh my God. Like there's a part of me that's that's feeling the way I'm feeling because I was looking for validation somewhere, fam. Like there was some validation that I was seeking in some of the things I was doing, some of the things I was assuming, some of the ways that I was moving. And I was like, I just got hit with that question, man. Like, at what point will you genuinely receive and fall deep into the love that you already are given and receive it, man? Like, at what point, because like she can't give it to you. It don't matter how dope she is. She ain't got that type of capacity. Neither do you. So it's like, at what point? And so that actually sparked such a massive journey for me, man. Believe it or not, confronted by that question, responding to that question by actually admitting that there were some things that I was looking for from a validation perspective that I wasn't feeling like I was getting, that actually pushed me to lean further into just acknowledging, reminding, and receiving more and more of God's love for me, that actually pushed me to love better, love with an open hand, and went on this entire I don't know, what is it now, 2, maybe almost 3-year journey, maybe in some months or so, of just loving, man, at such a greater level, because I'm recognizing that I'm so filled by the greatest love. I am full and satisfied. Therefore, I'm able to just give and not need others to be a certain way to do it. And that's one area to still perfect in. I'm not all the way there by any means, but it's something that I'm seeing more and more. And so kind of like, again, I know Dion has used the term when you eat your favorite food, I think of Olive Garden. Olive Garden's got phenomenal breadsticks. Everybody know that breadsticks be banging before you get your food. But the problem is that you go so ham on them breadsticks that when your food come, you like, bruh, like, I don't know how much more I got to consume. So you eat a little bit, you might take it home. Maybe, depending on how hungry you are, you might eat your whole plate. Maybe eat your whole plate, but you don't touch nothing else afterwards because it's just that dope. And if they were to come around with more and more after you ate the bread and your plate, you wouldn't even bother eating it. And you would probably save it, take it back to the crib, give it to somebody on the street, do it whatever, because you're full and satisfied. And I think one of the things that I've come to recognize more and more in my own journey is that Jesus didn't just come to save me. He came to satisfy me in this life today. He came to actually fill me up, hence him being the bread of life. And because that is the case, there are just certain things that only Jesus can grant me, that because he's the only one that can grant it to me, I don't need to find myself looking for that in other people. Because that is an unhealthy expectation on them. That is an expectation they cannot live up to. That's an expectation I cannot live up to for them. And no matter how much a relationship I may want with other people, they aren't capable of giving me everything, and they aren't supposed to be everything to me. And so I just went on that whole journey, and of course summarized in this somewhat rant, just to show that, like, man, there are so many places from lack and from emptiness, from voids, that if you're not careful, you'll find yourself running to people, places, and things, turning it into idolatry, trying to look for it to satisfy something that really only an eternal Father can do. And it's really, really challenging when you're faced with some really hard questions, some really hard considerations, but more importantly, when you're asked to let go of your tight grip on things that you said you'd never give up, you'd never live without, you'd never go without, whether that's expectations, positions, status, favorite things, foods, places, people, like just being asked to let go of those things. And I think when you do let go of those things, there's so much more on the other side of that actually pushes you to places of purpose perhaps then holding on to it, thinking your life is only made up of those compartments and those things. And so I just think that the biggest thing for me in this conversation is to really help us see that we all got it in us. And there's probably something in us currently that is closer to idolatry than we'd like to admit. Yep. And now it's up to us to do something about it and walk away with some applications here. So that's my opening rant. But
that was beautiful. Yeah. I love it. I'll get into some of the thoughts here that we have. Probably the first one I want to get into is my guy McDuckets on Twitch. He says maybe, first off, he says fast food straight up is one of his idols. I feel that. Mine don't even got to be fast. It could be slow food, somewhere in between, just food in general. But then he follows up and says, maybe I'm overthinking this, but the way I interpret this is that almost anything sounds like idolatry, and I go straight to depriving myself. So I'd love to give your thoughts on where that lands. But in short, I feel that. I actually want to read something that resonated with David over on Maverick.tv, where I said, you can have football just can't have you. All right, take that fullness everywhere. And so I get how it seems like, dang, we can't have no fun. Everything is idolatry. But to be real, everything can. Like, it's not like something is safe. God isn't trying to say, okay, them kids you can put before me, but not your track meet. No, even your kids, anything that you just prioritize over God. I think we need to be careful, though, because often we think that prioritizing God is reading our Bible, and that prioritizing God is going to church. But like that video showed, if you guys just got here, you missed a cool little video. Everyone that's going to the church building isn't doing it for God. Everybody isn't doing that to get to understand him, to humble themselves, to grow spiritually. Some people are doing it very selfishly. They're like, yo, I need my grandmama to be healed. And I feel like if I go to this place a few times, maybe Granny's gonna make it. And then when Granny died, they're mad at God because they didn't get what they wanted for. He wasn't the genie that they needed. And so even doing certain things at church, you think that you can. All right. So there's again, I worked with pastors for a while, and I don't know, I believe the little and no one should think this, but I thought they were kind of perfect at first. I was like, man, you had to be a pastor. You got to be something. You got to at least be close to perfect. I started hanging out with them ninjas. I knew the first time. So it was a bunch of youth pastors. We started volunteering. We got in the truck. First off, the church's van that we all got in was on the hip hop station. Again, that's not bad for me. I wasn't ready to put him in hell, but it was on like the normal hip hop station, and all of the pastors, whatever song was on, they just started bopping their head to it and singing it. And then they noticed and like stopped in front of me. I was like, bro, I know what are we doing? Come on. I know the lyrics. But you realize that the pastors, man, like, they haven't reached some perfect level. They don't not make mistakes. And some of them are so focused on building the church, building numbers, and serving people in the church that they neglect their family. And this idea of the church building and what something that seems so holy has become an idol. So I think it's important to understand that, yes, anything can, but that doesn't mean you don't. Sometimes we think, all right, so I can't live life. I'm going to just read my Bible all day and go to church. That's why I said that's not necessarily your relationship with God. Remember, God is trying to bring heaven to earth. And so the church, the Bible, all of that stuff is our means to an end for you to hopefully go take heaven to work. We don't want you to quit your job because it's not spending time with God, or it's not holy, or you probably you aren't not prioritizing God because you don't have most of your day in the church. You could be prioritizing God when you're at work, prioritizing God when you're hooping, playing basketball, coding, whatever it may do, or whatever you may do. In terms of what does your character look like when you're at work? Are you forgiving and understanding when Stacy's tripping and having a bad day? Are you cussing her out and being short-tempered? These are the type of things. Are you using someone in a relationship for them to make you feel okay versus you being okay, and then bringing that fullness to the relationship? So that's that's where it really lands, fam, where you definitely don't have to run from things. You don't have to stop having fun. Like, you don't have to stop going. You can be a Christian. You can love Jesus. You can still go to a football game. You can actually still, if you're into the face paint and anything, that ain't gonna send you to hell or anything. And actually, you can even be disappointed when your team loses. None of that automatically moves you into idolatry. Now, I could tell you what idolatry does look like. I never painted my face, but as an Eagles fan, I'd be watching all of them. Oh, I froze on my end. Can you still see me?
Camera went out, but I can hear you.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I'm gonna try to fix that. I'll be brief though. But I know idolatry for me looked like watching my games, those Eagles games on Sunday, and when those boys lost, I was in a mood all week until they won again. Man, they messed around, lost twice. Your boy was on suicide watch. All right. I couldn't control any of that. I couldn't control what they did, how they did it, when they did it. I wasn't on the team. None of them ninjas even knew I exist. But I was ready to cry when they would lose. It would completely shift and change my whole day. And so that is a picture of idolatry. And hopefully you guys don't have that image when you watch football. So if you're watching football, you're like, yeah, Dion, I want my team to win. When they lose, I'm sad, but I get over it. That's not idolatry, man. That's amazing. You could actually take that interest in sports, invite your friends, y'all go to the game, and then, yeah, maybe you want to paint faces or whatever, but that the love that you move with, the friendship, and maybe even displaying how you get over the loss, how you aren't clinging to it. All of these things are stuff that we can still participate in. It's just how we do it. But, right, let me throw it back to you so I can troubleshoot this dang camera.
Yeah. No, I think you hit all of that, man. I don't even know if there's much I could add to that. I don't think. I don't think God desires to take fun out of your life. I just think that when you come into a covenant relationship with God, fun looks different. It's not that fun is extremely eliminated. It's just, it looks different, man. And so maybe instead of a lot of the things that you look to do for fun now is actually because it's from a place of enjoyment, or it's a place of resetting, right? It's a place, an environment where you're connecting with people, and not, I need this because if I don't have it, then I'm not at peace for the day, for the week, for the month. I'm uneasy. And, if I don't have it, then I'm just imbalanced and out of alignment. And I do think that there is a line too of what we do consider enjoyment again, right? So like we can talk about the football games, we can talk about the basketball games, all those kinds of things, but I want to dive even to the format of drinking. That's a controversial thought in the Christian space, right? There's some people that will tell you, hey, you shouldn't touch a drink. No, it ain't for you. And there's some people that are like, yo, I drink. I have me some drinks, man. But it's in a responsible manner. I don't think anything's wrong with that. And so I think what we should care about is this aspect that Scripture tells us: do all things unto the Lord. Like, do everything as unto the Lord. And so when I consider doing everything unto the Lord, that means that I want to actually consider what my actions, activity, and decision making, how is this pleasing to the Lord? Is this something that God would look at and would be appreciative, okay, give a pass on, not because it's me, but because it's just within the standards that God sets, and how I honor people and how I love people and how I connect with people and how I live my life. I don't think that you have to remove yourself from an environment where there's alcohol involved in order to connect with somebody and have fun. Now, again, here's where all of this goes into, because we also talk about temptation. We talk about addiction. We talk about all these different things that so many people go through that perhaps your experience doesn't really give you that permission because, I was a severe alcoholic. So I probably shouldn't be around drinks because it only takes one to relapse. It only takes one to reset. And I'm not at a space where I can actually be in an environment like that and not stumble. That comes down to you knowing your capacity. That comes down to knowing what you have room for to tolerate without you falling back into something that God has delivered you from. And so, and then again, I mean, we'd be here all day if I went down the list, right? Like now, if we were talking, pornography and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's actually probably something we shouldn't engage in at all. But I think instead of it being a slap on the wrist or a hitting of the hand every time you go to it, again, there's something inwardly that is lacking, that is showing up on the surface, and that surface response is us going to the porn, it's us going to the drinks, it's us going to all of these crazy environments that are placing us in realms of intoxication and addictive behavior. So we have to get an understanding of what's at the root in order for us to really see, okay, how should I manage this? How should I move forward with this? And sometimes there are some things that I got to cut off really hard in order for me to begin to actually put into place what's necessary and get to a place where I can manage what's in front of me properly and honor God in the same manner. So no, I think the definition of fun changes. I think you can still have fun. You can still enjoy the games. You can still go to professional games. You can still do all that kind of stuff. But I think questions to consider is, does it change you? Do you change who you are when you're in that environment? That's an interesting thought. Is it something that impacts your emotional state so much that, as Dion pointed, like if your favorite team lost, you're not good. Like the whole house is on edge when around you, like your whole family, like man, don't talk to him. His team lost. He's not in a good place. like, is it that deep? Right. I think that's something to consider. If you aren't able to get, if all is good, but all of a sudden you found out ain't no wine at the party, now you're a problem. Do we need to address that? Because I think that's something to consider, right? Is it more important for you to have first place in every video game you play than it is for you to live righteously, lovingly, and humbly before others, and move with honor, integrity, character, and respect? Like, I think that's something just to consider, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to be less competitive. It just means that we have to prioritize things. So it's just interesting to consider. So that's probably just my thoughts on it. But I thought you killed that, D. I do.
I love it. No, thank you for that. That was great. And then Kane was feeling that too over on YouTube. Said you had a great point. But
oh yeah,
I'm gonna throw it to my guy Buddy. I thought had a great question. He says, do you believe that being genuine can form for someone who doesn't necessarily have it? And if so, how would you say that happens? I asked him to expand a little bit just to make sure I was tracking properly. He said, so for example, if you give money to the poor, not because you expect something good to happen to you, you just do it because you genuinely want to. Do you believe that someone who isn't genuine can eventually become genuine? And if so, how do we go about it? Is it something mental or spiritual we have to overcome, or both? Man, I think that's a fire question, buddy. Is it mental? Is it physical? Is it both? I would say a bit of both. Please, great follow-up. Bless your thoughts on it. But something I think that is constantly overlooked, buddy, especially with our spiritual walk, is insight. Now, insight is something that is developed in the process of doing something, right? So, for example, buddy, you are a anime professional, right? I be coming across your TikToks, and so now I am not. So you watch a lot of anime, and I just know anime from the outside. And I'll probably use a better example. You're a content creator for anime, and there are a lot of people that watch what you do and think, oh yeah, content creation is this, or it's just that. And once they start to actually do it, they gain experiences, they learn lessons, and they have insight on how things actually work once they start doing it. And so that's why it's important for us to start doing things even before you understand fully why you want to do them and how you're supposed to do them and the benefits of it. Because there's so much that my camera's lagging. Yeah. Is it? Are you
Yeah,
sure, Luke?
just a
Is it like it
tad.
for you?
It's a little
Yeah.
pixelated
You sure? It might
and
just be
laggy.
you.
Hey,
Nah, I'm hating. No, let
could
me
be.
know.
It could
My
be.
fault.
It could be.
We're gonna try and push through, y'all. My bad. I'm having some issues over here, but yeah, it's really easy to think you know how something works just by hearing it. So, for example, Jesus will say, "Forgive your enemies," or be kind to people that might be rude to you. And on the outside, you're just like, ugh, I don't really get it. Like, I'll just do it because Jesus said, and like logically, it may not make sense to you. And then as you go in to start and you actually do it, right? And you are mindful of some of the experiences you have, you actually start to see like, oh, well, hold up. This person was mean to me. I was nice to them. And it just sucked out all of the tension, all the animosity. Like there was no kind of how like a fire might need oxygen to stay alive. It's like the oxygen was just removed from the situation. And you're like, I kind of see how that works. And then you keep doing it. And then you start to notice, you're like, yo, the more I do this, I realize that like they don't really have control over me, over like my anger, my frustration. Like that was something that I was doing. And now once I live at this level where I'm able to forgive people, like at first when you're doing it, you think it's something grudgingly, like, I don't really want to do this. I hate it. And you think it's something you just have to do, or you're a bad person or a bad Christian. And then the more you do it, you realize like, yo, this is the most powerful place to live. Like where I'm at, they can't even touch me. They can't hurt me. And I actually get to be a better blessing to them in their life. And you understand that is closer to prioritizing God than even just reading your Bible all day. And so it's like, yeah, let's read our Bible. You're like, is it mental? Is it spiritual? Yeah, it's all of that. It's constantly getting that stuff in your mind, being patient with the process. Because think about it. So the Bible talks about being transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? So you transformed how you view anime and how you see it, right? You probably started off somewhere like me. How did you do that? It was a process, constantly getting that stuff in the mind. You started building patterns. What a neuroscientist would say is like neural pathways. Like your mind is just used to working in certain ways towards the anime. The more you do that, the more you work things out with your faith, things will just start. You'll actually transform that mind. And again, you'll fall into a maturity where you understand why you do things. But it starts by doing it. It's the same way with like my son, right? He doesn't fully understand why we move with order in terms of things like chewing with our mouth closed, cleaning up behind ourselves. Like he couldn't fully get that stuff yet, but we still start him with working through the steps, right? And then through that, there's insight and there's things to point at now that he's actually doing it. It's like, see, son, this is why we brush our teeth and why we clean our room or et cetera, et cetera. So let me know if that makes sense, buddy, and why even when you're first doing things, while if it doesn't feel genuine to you, you still want to do it, because that's so much of our walk with God is the lessons come in the doing. It's not, hey, Dion, your command is to love your wife like Christ loved the church. So I got to sit there and read my Bible until I can do that flawlessly. No. That is the command. And I'm working to do that. And in doing that, I'm being transformed and I grow closer to God and more like Christ in the efforts towards it. You have any thoughts on that? Great.
I mean, shoot. I think here's the only one. I became a genuine individual by learning the results from my selfish motives and journeying through that with other people. I have not always been this kind of individual that you see today. That took a lot of growth, took a lot of experiences, took a lot of disappointments, took a lot of things that I once moved in so selfishly that some things came to a breaking point where I was like, bro, something's got to give. Something's got to change. Because I'm just tired of being mad and frustrated and all those kinds of things. And so, yeah, being genuine, that is something that you cultivate. And I think you grow in your genuineness that I think easily equates to generosity. There's no cap off there. We're all growing in it in some way based on where we are and where we're trying to go. And so I think the more you level up, the less selfishness or the more selfishness you have to drop, which I think is always the challenge to being genuine, because anything that's not from a genuine place always has a secret motive that is filled with selfish ambition, right? So you giving a gift to somebody in great hopes that they give something back to you. And the moment that they don't, now you believe that the gift you gave was of nothing, meant nothing, and you wish you wouldn't have done it. That tells you all you needed to know, that what you gave wasn't from a genuine place just to give. It was to receive. Think about something as small as you hold the door for somebody, they walk past and don't say nothing to you. They just keep walking. How many times have you just seen yourself snatching them by the back of their shirt and bringing them right back? Hey, champ. Hey, I know you saw me sitting here. You're going to have to, get right or get left. All right, let's try this again. And they do it again, right? So that just kind of lets you know, man, that those are some areas, no matter how small they are, where you're like, ooh, okay. Like, do I genuinely want to connect with this person? Or do I just see what I think this person can give me? And that's my reason for reaching out. That's my reason for checking in. That's my reason for pulling up. That's my reason for going on a date. That's my reason for giving a gift, right? Like, those are the things that I think in our day to day, man, is what that believe it or not, man, is the process of working out your salvation. Like, people think that term or that scripture is just only from, okay, I'm gonna work out my salvation by going to church, taking notes, putting my tithes and offering in. And don't get me wrong, I do think that has its place. But if you really want to know what it looks like to work out your salvation on a day-to-day basis, you're going to encounter a lot of challenges inwardly about things that you encounter from a day-to-day basis in the mundane. And it's in those moments that you're actually going to see, okay, where am I at? And then how far do I have to get to who I want to be, knowing that I'm not going to make up that much ground in a day. It's going to happen over time with more reps and more understanding, and more flesh hitting the floor as I am continuing to connect with God in so many different ways. So hopefully that kind of added some kind of flavor to it. But 1000%, man, you can form a sense of genuineness. But I don't think you should expect to experience that without having experiences where your selfishness is exposed and you go through frustrations and disappointments and things like that from not getting what you wanted and how you wanted. And then that is what exposes, okay, that's where I was not being genuine. So now I need to be willing to let go of holding on to the desired outcome so much that when I don't get it, I think everything I did was worthless. I think that's something to really pay attention to, and something I've grown in a lot. Over the last year, some change, man. And it's a world of difference.
Fire. I love that.
Yeah.
And Kane had your back. I guess apparently I'm Nintendo 64 quality. Am I still like that?
Yeah.
All right. Now I'm black. Yeah. All right. I'll try to be brief then. I ain't gonna be standing up here looking ugly. But
I remember you had all them thoughts on my internet demons. Now look at you. Yeah.
Look at me, man. That's crazy. Nick asked a question about internet going out. My stuff started tripping. But Keyshawn says, do you think that speaking the gospel to people without relevance or worrying about others' salvation is a form of idol worship? I'm kind of hearing that as like people just kind of doing it for them, trying to feel significance, trying to feel like, hey, yeah, you were driving Nick crazy too.
I see.
Fake stat. Yeah, don't worry, Nick. He's on top of it. But I feel like Keyshawn. Yeah, I do think so, and that's what a lot of people do. Think about. And again, this is why we have to be clear on our motives. All right, which are these deep-seated, like constant conditions of the heart. Like, these are our motives. And then on top of that, we have our intentions. And you could have good intentions on the front end, but not so good motives underneath that are really driving. And often, like a lot of the stuff we see against the LGBTQ community or just anything where you got that Christian that's like standing on the corner and they're like, repent, we're going to hell, you're sinning. And I think there's really good intentions on the surface, maybe some impure motives that we need to look at. And often a lot of our frustrations sometimes about someone else and their sin, the root is in us. Like there's something about us that is off on why their sin bothers us so much. Because Jesus was clear, like, yo, get the log out of your eye first before you start trying to fix everyone else. And I think that's something to watch, even as we're trying to do something that on the surface seems great. Like, I'm trying to share the gospel. Let's be mindful of how we're doing it. Like, are you really doing it for that person's benefit? Because you believe in the power of the gospel? Is there something else underneath it that could be driving it? But great question. Any thoughts on that? Great.
Shoot. So I was too busy trying to fix this blind that ain't fixing. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't think I got it right. But what was the thought?
Yeah, it basically is it idol worship to be trying to share the gospel with people? Basically he's asking, is there selfish ways to go about sharing the gospel? You know what I mean? That isn't really for that person, and it's actually a form of idolatry type vibe.
Wow. I think that's so interesting. That's such an interesting question. I think, wow, that is such an interesting question, because on one hand, when you think of the initial biblical definition of idolatry, it's anything that's put above God. But some people would even look at, spreading the gospel message. I'm doing it for Jesus, though. Like, I'm talking about Jesus. I'm trying to bring people to Jesus. Like, so how can it be idolatry worship? I think that's something that you have to be very, very brutally honest about your motive and why you're doing it. Because I think there are so many people who are getting into the business of labeling themselves as Christians. But in all actuality, it's a money scheme. It's a money grab. It's a platform. It's, again, when you think of let's take Christian rap, for example, right? So that thing is like coming up for real, right? Like, there are so many more people who are enjoying that. People who are really talented in the music making business and are choosing to do it for the Lord in a way that gives others an opportunity to still worship and still be listening to some amazing music. But there are many people, man, who are in that business just as much as there are in the secular space that, don't actually live their life for Christ, right? Like that isn't even something that they're trying to do, but they know the language. They know the language, they know the verses, they know all those kinds of things. And so they're just kind of putting it out there because they know, hey, this is a blue ocean. And so, no, I got you, Twister. I got you. So yeah, it's like, I think it can be. I think you just have to really be honest about your motive for doing it. Jesus uses us. He doesn't need us. And I think from that perspective alone ought to help us to be able to navigate how we distribute and reach, engage, evangelize the gospel to people. And so I just don't think that we have to go about it in a manner of trying to put people into hell or try to put people into heaven, because we can't do either. I just think that there is room for us, though, to share the gospel in a manner that is still honoring Christ, still honoring his message, still honoring his mission, and not losing our sanity trying to get somebody out of a deep, dark hell we believe they're in. And then feeling like, okay, well, now that they've accepted Jesus, I can get some rest at night. I just don't think that's how Jesus operates, man. And so, yeah, I think there can be a place where it can be, for sure. Because then I would actually challenge that maybe you aren't evangelizing, you aren't teaching, you aren't preaching in a format that is actually pleasing to God. And what's so crazy about it is God can still use that to reach people. That's how amazing God is, right? Like, God, like, trust me, we all preach in part, we know in part, all that kind of stuff. It doesn't matter how well of a message and sentence I can put together. I am still only speaking in part. Like, I am never speaking it in its entirety. But there are some people, man, who will, Paul even talks about it in the writing of Philippians. He's in prison. He's like, yo, there are people who are preaching the gospel for the sake of trying to belittle me and throw dirt on my name. He's like, bro, whether they're with me or not, all I care for is that the gospel is preached. And so there are people who will come in and preach the gospel from vain places. But God can still use that to reach people's hearts. But that does not excuse the person that is doing this vain preaching, as if he can still go and do it. And so, even though God can still use it, you definitely want to check your heart on that, because you can be putting yourself in a position where you're caring more about, how you're perceived and trying to check things off the box instead of, hey, I actually just want to reflect the heart of Christ. Your decision doesn't impact me because I've made my decision. But it does give me a window and an opportunity to just show Christ to you without feeling like I have to go over the top to do it, and feel like I'm making a difference, but I'm really destroying you. I think there's a difference there. So that'd be my approach to it. Hopefully that made sense. Yeah.
I love it. A couple thoughts that came in on that. Luke was saying, I definitely think there are people are worshiping an idol when they allow their emotions or worldly convictions to justify an abrasive and unproductive approach to spreading the gospel. Folks have signs that say God hates whatever, whoever, and claim to be doing God's work. That's 100% putting things before God.
Absolutely.
And Fisher says, I do think righteous anger is not a bad thing. I hate the alphabet soup agenda. He emphasizes agenda because it results in pain, perversion, and self-harm. It's why I'm so passionate about preaching to them, because they are hurting themselves living that lifestyle, and it's sad to see. And I almost feel like he's touching on something powerful that isn't necessarily wrong. It just needs to be coupled with like what Luke is saying. So what do we do with that? When we feel something against the agenda, how do we operate? And I think
Jesus got angry. Like anger isn't a bad emotion. I think that's one thing that we've horribly taught in the church, man. Like anger is not a bad emotion. It's a part of the human experience. What he says though is be angry. He gives you permission to do that and sin not. So we think that the sinning is, okay, I don't want to go tear up somebody's house, tear up somebody's property. I don't want to go put my hands on nobody. I don't want to go to jail for doing nothing crazy. Yes, that's a part of it. And you can sin through your words. You can sin by way of portraying a message from a place, no matter how anger or how justified your anger can be, because I do think righteous anger does have a place. However, if you aren't in a position to where you can calmly address somebody and still treat them as a human being that's sitting across from you, that has an opportunity to receive the same gospel that you received, and you can't even touch on the subject because every time you do, you get wild up, but you label it as righteous anger. And I'm not saying that's what you're doing, Fisher. I'm just thinking of other people who have. I just don't even think it's something you need to talk about. I just think that you are better off walking away from that and getting into a place where you can get into a calm position and maybe try again another time instead of trying to make everything happen there. I 1000% like where Luke was at, and I feel where Fisher was coming from too. I like a lot of what Luke was saying though, man. I've encountered a lot of like street preachers, fire and brimstone type of deal, man. And the only thing that was stirred up was combative responses. Nobody was having a conversation. Like I remember going through that crowd with me and a couple classmates of mine who we were good believers, of course, together in that class. And man, we just took a couple people, we walked around the campus, man, and we were just talking to them, and we were like, man, not trying to divert from that attention without, destroying that guy. And at the same time, trying to give them a perspective that they just weren't even in a position to hear, because all they were really hearing was how much a God hated them through his posture. And it was a wrong reflection in my eyes. I don't think it was beneficial, man. And so I think that's just something you got to consider in some of that, man. It's tough. And I think on top of that, I think what he said there is allow their emotions or worldly convictions. I think, now this might be controversial. I think a form of idolatry can be when you place your personal convictions on others. I think there's room enough to say that.
I agree. Yeah.
There is so much people that get on social media that get convicted about something, and they all of a sudden turn it into, hey, the whole body shouldn't be doing this. And we're like, well, hold on, wait a minute now.
God working on my cussing. Why you still cussing?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I know God convicted you about you no longer going to that concert and stuff like that. I get you. But hold on, champ, hold on. This did not just become universal all of a sudden because the last time you went to a concert, you lost your mind, lost control, and couldn't get home. Like, whoa, let's pump the brakes. And so I think you have to be willing to admit in some of the conversations that you have with other people that, hey, man, this is just a conviction that I have. And I'm not even sure. Of course, I have no way of knowing what God is dealing in your heart. And I think a lot of times the personal convictions, this is how I think this is one way you can know that a personal conviction you're having is just something that God is working through you based on maybe how you've been perceiving the world around you through experiences, things like that. It's not to say that there's an extreme lack of biblical reference to what he's convicting you of. It's just not something that is so solidified in the text itself verbatim that you can't really use it as a strong reference to point to somebody else as to why they cannot do such things. Right. So again, this gets into the weeds and nuances of stuff. But I do think that there are really strong convictions that God can place on our hearts. And I think anytime he does that, we should just be listening and obedient to that for our sake without trying to get other people or shaming other people to follow our conviction. I do think that's a tough one. So I think pointing that out from Luke's response was dope. Yeah, for sure. Beautiful. Talking about the Thai tribute. I dislike autocorrect. Ty Tribbett? What do you do?
Ty Tribbett, yeah, you might have to.
Yeah, you talking about his statement on like church? Is that what you mean? That's the last thing I ever heard on Ty, I think. So I'd love to hear that. But anyway, yeah, those are. Oh man, Romans talks about all that all the time. Just because you think the meat is wrong, yes, twist, yes, bro, yes, absolutely. You know how many times I had switch. I've been in the midst of switching my diet a little bit, right? Man, like I've been just almost off rip. You almost feel yourself just feeling a little better than people.
Oh yeah.
What are you talking about? You eating a burger?
Got pork.
Pork. I got my kale. Thank you very much. I'm eating healthy. Like, bro, fluff you, bro. Like, don't forget you didn't know what a burger tastes like. I think what is amazing for me is being around people who keep me human enough to not allow me to get to those places, bro. Like, I think that's a beautiful thing. You know what I'm saying? Right. Like when Dion be cracking jokes and roasting, that I
remind him he's ugly daily. Exactly.
That keep me human, baby.
His flesh. Exactly.
That keep me human. Brother. I gotta laugh, bro. Like, ease up. You know what I'm saying? Like, absolutely, Twist. That's a great point, man. That's a great point. I love that. Nah, Ty. Yeah, you said. So, did you have a thought on that? Y'all talking about that? No, I don't think we were referencing that, or at least I wasn't. With that. I mean, so. Yeah.
But Nick had a good question. He says, how do we quantify idol worship? Meaning, if it's defined as putting something over God, how do we define what worth we are giving something compared to worth we are giving to God? And I thought that's deep. I feel like all of Nick's questions are deep, like a Kendrick verse. And I don't know if he meant to make it this deep, but here's what I love about that. At least this is what stuck out to me the first is the fact that there is no, at least to my knowledge, there's no like test kit you can get. You know what I mean? Like, you know how COVID had a little at-home test kit or something? Like, I can't go and do a little test kit where I like test my heart and then I put it in a little beaker and we watch it turn blue and it's like, see, I love God. I trust God. And here's what I love about that. One, it should make us very, very humble about just even, me trying to judge Grape and how much he loves God and how much a priority God is for him. Because the true answer, I don't have access to. I can look at signs. I can, you judge a tree by its fruit and things of that nature, but I don't fully know. But then the next part where my mind goes that I love is that we need to work on our mindfulness and even being able to be self-aware enough to really see where our priorities are at. Because at a very spiritually immature level, one, we don't even know how to prioritize God. We think just because we went to church every day in the month, it's like, yo, God was prioritized. But then as soon as we left the church building, we talked however we want, treated people in some of the worst ways. And so there can be, inefficiency, you struggle with even being self-aware. And that's why I love practicing mindfulness exercises, things like journaling on the regular, things like meditation. Like, sit down and think about your problems, y'all, like you do Madden. Like, when you just lose in Madden and you keep throwing picks, you don't just give up. You go on, y'all will go on Twitch and watch for 6 hours, watch Dubby win, and you'll take these notes and then try to copy all of his plays. You do the exact same thing spiritually. Like, when you're struggling with something, you keep giving into that temptation. You keep cussing Stacy out at work, right? These are the things that we meditate on. And it's 100% a skill of being able to accurately judge, like, yo, am I truly putting God where he needs to be? Because I think most people and most men are under a delusion. And you hear them talk about spirituality, and then if you press even a little bit, it's like they're not really doing anything. We had my guy McDaniel, I don't know if he made it today to this, but he was being vulnerable in our men's call yesterday. And I loved it because he highlighted something beautiful. He left Christianity and now he's essentially coming back. But a big part of him leaving, he was frustrated with some people in the church, which is common. But my man had almost never read the Bible. And so, again, it speaks to the spiritual immaturity. He didn't even really leave Christianity. He was just mad at people. He left like a toxic church or something, but he didn't even fully know the faith that he was leaving. And I think that's a very common mistake where people think they're doing more. Like, I mean, Jesus said it very plainly, like, many people are going to say, Jesus, we did this. I did this in your name. I had this many church services. I did all this. And he's going to be like, yeah, but you didn't know me. You were doing all that for you. You wanted to have a little Build-A-God, like Build-A-Bear. You kept the things that were convenient for you. And you thought you were doing great the whole time because you created your own spirituality, your own religion. You weren't really after me. And so that's why I love this question, Nick. It puts us in a place where we're like, okay, I can't try to live my faith for Grape, because Grape isn't the judge of that. And Grape will have all the opinions in the world, but he won't fully know. And I need to know how to reach such a level of truth and self-awareness that I can be honest with myself, because there's no test kit for myself to be like, oh yeah, you're trusting God, you're trending up. I need to be able to go into a place where I'm stripping all of the insecurities, all the lies I've created. I love how Michael Ty will say, God can't bless who you pretend to be. And that's what we do. We try to bring this cookie cutter cupcake version that we kind of give to the world to God. And it's like, I'm in this position, but I'm praying and acting and trying to build off of a person that I'm projecting in this position. And we wonder why we never grow spiritually. And so I love that, Nick, because it's a relationship thing. Because it's the same thing. It's like, it'd be like someone coming to us, Nick, as married men, and being like, prove you love your wife. Or like, what is the... and have her prove it to me, right? She can't go for anything. And that whole aspect of the game of life should change how we go about things. And it makes it a more personal, and it just falls into everything we're talking about. Like, the game isn't about you trying to remove all these other people's logs or moving things out of their eyes. But when you do it, it almost comes from a more relational, not even trying to do it way, because you were so focused on you. You were so self-aware that you start shining in a way that it couldn't help but get over to them, and now they want to shine. And so you kind of sparked more of a rant, Nick. I don't even know if that was a good answer, but let me know. And I think I just love the conversation that starts. What thoughts do you have on that, Grape?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Because I think you're absolutely right. How I love saying it, selfishly, I might add, projection is the language of the blind. Self-awareness is the beginning language of the healed. And it is a really interesting thing, as I've seen it in my own life, even with things like sermons I've heard where I'm like, bro, this would be perfect for you know who. Like, man, if I could just get you to see this how I see this, man, we cook it. I just need you to come with your boy. We got it covered. And let me tell you, man, I went back and listened to a sermon that I had once moved like that towards somebody. And boy, did I ever hear it more clearly than I did when I first listened to it, because my whole demeanor and understanding of it was different, because I wasn't thinking about how would this impact somebody else. And that was all from a place of projection. And so I think projection is one of those areas that I think we want to stay away from in the crash course of addressing thoughts and perspectives like this, because I think it varies, honestly. And I 1000% agree. Here's a biblical scripture that I would add to it, maybe to give it a little bit of maybe additional value to you. To the perspective, and something to consider. Mark 14, verse 19. This is the context of the Last Supper, obviously found in all four Gospels. And Jesus just got through telling the disciples that one of you will betray me. And the question that they raise here, surely you don't mean me. Another version might read, Lord, is it I? This question just is amazing to me, because none of the disciples, one, knew it was Judas, like we the readers know it was Judas ultimately, right? Because like we weren't in the present, so obviously we can read ahead, and it all seems like it happens in moments and in chapters, but it happens in span of time, right? And all these other kinds of things that develop as the story unfolds. Of course, we understand that, but what's so amazing to me is none of the disciples looked around and started pointing the finger at who they thought it could be. In fact, just reading more and more in depth into the commentaries from people who are way smarter than me in such a space of study, revealed to me that, this was a sign of them recognizing that they had the capacity within themselves to betray Jesus. All of them did. And so they asked this question, not in the sense of, Lord, it could never be me, so you don't even have to look this way. It's more like, if it is me, take it from me. Like I'm gonna give this up to you. And so it's a manner of what the self-awareness that I like to discuss here, being honest about who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. When you're able to do that, man, that to its core is how you're able to progress and grow. Nobody, like, I can put on a show for everybody, anybody I meet. I can convince you all day, every day that I'm at a 10 and life is good. But what good I've learned, what good does it do for me if I show up fake? If I show up and not be legitimate, if I'm not telling you what's going on and what's wrong with me, what good does it do? I mean, okay, cool. They go all about their day. The things that you really want them to see aren't revealed, so you don't get any help. And you're still in the same position you were in yesterday. So it's like, how can we expect to really do anything different and grow? And so, yeah, I think to define it is hard. For me, I would just say, man, you know you more than we know you. You know you more than anybody else. And so it's like, okay, if I know that I'm approaching this in a way that is not healthy, that is a reflection of wounds that haven't been healed, or I'm looking for validation, I'm coming to this because I'm unfulfilled and I'm looking for this to fulfill me. Like, I have to be in that space. And here's the beautiful thing about what we have room for as humans is we have the capacity, once we acknowledge that, to now revert the energy to where we want it to be. So, hey, if I walk into this space and I'm like, yo, I'm giving this person this gift because deep down, I just want to hear them tell me how dope of a person I am. And I want them to give me something back in return. All right, well, now that I've identified that, is that really where I want to be, though? Okay, no, I don't. I actually just want to give this to them because they're cool people. I want to just show my appreciation. I don't need nothing in return. So then I can actually take the time to work my way through that progress to get there. So how do I get there? Well, okay, where do I really need to get my validation from? Is there something, why do I need to hear it from them more than I hear it from myself? Why do I need to hear it from them that, hey, I'm doing all the right things, I'm good, I'm at the right positions, I'm doing the best I can with what I got, I'm right where I'm supposed to be? Why is it that I need to hear it from them more than hear it from myself and encourage myself? Something beautiful about scripture that I read earlier this week, he says, encourage yourself, speak to yourself the things that are good. That is a powerful thing to be able to put yourself in those positions, to where it's not to say that encouragement from other people and external sources aren't beneficial, but it's like, okay, not everybody is in a position to just encourage you all the time. They got stuff going on in their life too. They need some life spoken into them too. And so at some point you got to get to a place where you're good with just giving it to you. And you know where you are, you know where you stand, and more importantly, how God feels about you, to where if they don't, you're not bothered. You know who you are. You know where you are at. You're good. And so, I think you just know you more than anybody else. And I think the moment you're able to begin just staying honest, brutally honest, now we have something to work with, versus, you know what? I don't think it's like that. I think it's more like this. I don't think it, I don't know. It's all gray area with you. Yes or no, and make a decision from there based on what you're honestly seeing about where you are and what you're dealing with. So that would be what I add to it, a little bit extra, but hope it was something there.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I loved all of that.
I saw a question earlier. Actually, after Twist asked his there, Rig came in. He said, a question I have is, how do you go about starting to focus more on God and putting those idols aside to become a better follower? I understand the easy answer. The easy answer is to just start putting more focus on God and don't be lazy. But how would you guys go about putting your idols aside? Maybe fasting from those idols or anything else? If you wanted to go.
Yeah. I can warm it up real quick. So basically he's asking like very practical ways, right? Not just Christianese type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Ricky, I think I always think the fastest path between point A and point B is some sort of model, some sort of mentorship, like someone that can show you. And so while I do think at the end of the day, you need to understand that your relationship with God is just between you and God, and that's the beauty of it. But I think if you can get, just like you're experiencing now, like a community where you can ask good questions from people that you respect and know, and there's somewhere that you're trying to go, I think that's always the fastest path from point A to point B, no matter what you're doing, whether it's a spiritual walk, whether you're trying to get better at Madden. It's like, who's good at Madden? All right, let me learn from them. And so I think being a part of community is solid. I call it the rule of thirds. So try to have, 1/3 of my relationships in some sort of mentorship. So people I can go to get questions, people that will pour into me, make me stronger. Then you have 1/3 of your relationships that's peer to peer. So people that are on your level and they can relate to you, because my mentors don't have the same problems as I do, don't have the same stresses as I do. And while they can have some of those answers and help me see the other side of it, they're not as able to relate in the moment with a lot of things. Some of the things I'm going through, they might be 10 years past and even cold towards some of it, depending on who your mentor is. And they make it seem so easy and dry. But then you got your peers, and then you have a third that isn't below you, right? Like in value or anything, but they're people that more so you mentor, that you're helping, that you're coaching, that you're teaching. And that helps you stay sharp with the things that you're teaching, that you might be learning from your mentor, or lessons that you're learning, just going through things with your peers. It helps solidify it as you're teaching that. So I think if you can get a part of a community that's something like that, or just build it on your own. I'm not saying you go to church and you find all of that there, but you're out there. So maybe some of that you're getting here from the Truth Project. Other things you might be getting in person. There's videos and stuff you can be watching online. And so we're in the information age, man. So it's never been easier. If you check the notes for the week, again, exclamation notes in any of the chats, at the bottom of it, I have some resources linked. One of those is the Faith Factory. That has a bunch of resources on there for you. You can go immerse yourself in a bunch of Christian YouTubers, TikTok. So every time you're on social media, it'll be a bunch of Christian stuff. There's music. And I think very practically, all of that will help you. I think that And then last thing I'll probably throw in there is a lot of the mindfulness stuff that we use that we were talking about, because you just want to make sure you're working on the right problem. And spirituality is, I look at life in four dimensions. Riggy, I think you got your faith, you have your relationships, including the relationship with yourself, but you have your energy, which is your mental, physical health, and then you have your economics, which is your finances. Those are four inescapable aspects of life, right? You could not believe in God, just like you could not believe a truck is on a freeway. I don't mean it ain't coming. And you could try to neglect any of those dimensions. Again, you will have to answer for them all on a daily in some sort of way. And so, yeah, I won't get too deep, but I think you should just be practicing some mindfulness exercises in those areas, thinking through like where you're at. I want to walk you through one of my programs, man. Also at the bottom of the notes, you guys will see there's some resources there. We have a free community you guys can join that I just linked. There's also something called the Infinite XP. There's a Man Enough Challenge. All of those are free, and those will help you, man, because we're doing a lot of journaling. You're doing a lot of meditating, having to think on things. And these are, I promise you, fam, it changes how you see the world. Like, and you'll probably notice this if you just poke at your homeboys, like where they're at spiritually. I've never seen people wing it more than any other dimension. Maybe relationships, like they get a little bit weird about, learning how to communicate better or showing empathy in their relationships. Like they don't want to be taught that. But like ninjas, like their whole worldview will be built off of like 8 TikToks and something their drunk uncle said once at a barbecue. Like their drunk uncle says something, they like, oh yeah, that's deep. And then they've seen a couple TikToks and a couple conspiracies on the Bible, a few things here and there. And then they're like just winging it and wondering why things don't work. And so that's why I would want you to get around mentorship that can expose some of that, help you see things clearly, answer questions, and save a lot of time. Like, fam, just don't wing it for 10 years just to have to go find some mentorship, because you won't get those 10 years back. So that would be my thoughts. Ray, what you think?
Absolutely nothing, because you killed that. So that's it right there. Yeah, y'all pass y'all offering buckets to the left. I'm going to Twitch, man, because Twitch got some good convo in here, man. Shout out to everybody in there. NIL Menzel, Killer Juan, McDuggett still kicking it with us. So I'm gonna go through a few of these. We might be able to do a little speed round on here, because I know we got a couple more questions on the Maverick.tv. Young Spook asked, do you even find yourself questioning God, and is that something I should feel guilty for? Great question. No, I don't think you should feel guilty for doing that. And yes, absolutely, I do find myself questioning God. There's a lot of things that are above me that I don't know. And I think first I want to say that it's reasonable and well within the human experience to question things that cause uncomfortability, and to question and be curious about things you don't know and have an answer to. That's a very human thing. We all have it in some area. And more importantly, God designed us. Isn't that so interesting? God designed us in such a way where we would grow curiosity and things of that sort around things that we don't know and are mysteries to us. At the same time, with the mystery aspect of it, I think that's what makes God so amazing, is it keeps us near him. Mystery keeps us leaning towards him and keeping our hand in his hand towards the things that we have questions about. Because if we never had questions, would we ever need God? That's a really interesting question that I would park at, because there are a lot of people who are so intellectually up there that they're like, yo, God who, right? But in the same breath are yet so silly, even at their level of intellect, that they've convinced themselves that they don't need God because of their intellect, right? And so we know that intellect doesn't really get us that far, but that's on that end. I don't want to necessarily rabbit down that trail, because perhaps your question is more towards, like, I got questions about, like, one, is he real? Two, if he is, why in the world is all this struggle and bad stuff happening? Maybe you've got questions around your legitimate immediate life. There's so much pain and turmoil around me, man. I don't know what's going on. Struggling in school, struggling in my relationships. My girl thinks I'm always tripping, and family is surrounded in sickness. And I don't even know how I'm going to pay this next rent. Like, I don't know where it's coming from, like all these questions. And I think to that, just to touch on it tadly, I would say that asking God is never offended by the questions that are on your heart and mind. In fact, he welcomes them. And I just think what's imperative for us to get is that God may answer them in a way different fashion than we assume he'll answer them. It's not always an audible. God is not, I don't know if there are very few times I can actually recall believing wholeheartedly that, like, not to say that I heard a whisper, like in maybe it was a study I was doing, or something along those lines. But it's very few times. There's not a whole lot of times in my life where Sean, he's just speaking from a cloud and going crazy. And so to that, God is not offended by your questions. And sometimes he answers them through people. Sometimes he answers them through opportunities. Sometimes he answers them with just his presence and being peaceful, reminding you of his word, reminding you of what he's promised you, all those kinds of things. And knowing that your questions are a part of the human experience, and he is always of greater authority outside of time. And no matter the question you have, he has an answer to, and he'll always come through, maybe never revealing all the answers to your questions, but making sure that you are understanding that no matter the question, he's always present. And no matter the question, he's always above and beyond. He's greater than your thoughts, greater than your heart. And he's got you covered 1000%. I think that's something that I've seen all throughout the text. And there's a lot of questions that are asked to God that God doesn't really answer in a way that you would expect. Job had an abundance of questions in his suffering, and the way Job was answered was way out of what he could have thought. And so I just think questions are natural. Don't be afraid to ask them. God has a way of answering them. Lean more into who God is. And as the questions come up and they're asked, God has a way of revealing answers to you. Pay attention to more of where his hand is, where his presence is, more than you getting the answer you're assuming. Because sometimes we just look more for what we're hoping we get. We don't find it. So then we believe God never answered, when in reality he did. It just wasn't something that we were initially looking for, or maybe we wanted. But he's never offended by your questions. Don't feel guilty about that. No, God welcomes all of that. So that's a quick thought. Did you have anything on that, D?
Co-sign everything he said. God's not afraid of that. I think something to keep in mind is, why are we questioning God? I think sometimes we are questioning God because we want to get out of Christianity or just whatever it may be. Yeah, because I had a whole season, fam, where I was just in deep arguments that, I'm not saying that they don't have any basis in your faith. It's just, I'm trying to think of an analogy. So, like, let's say you were trying to be a better basketball player and you were obsessing over, like, the fabric of your shorts. It's like, okay, maybe at like a pro level, based off how many hours you're playing and sweat and comfortability, okay, maybe. But it's like, how do you shoot? Can you dribble? Can you play defense? These are the things that are fundamental to the game of basketball. And there's some people that, and trust me, I love the deep questions. Like, we've been deep for years. If you guys are just got here, like, we love all of that tough stuff. But sometimes people are getting into things that, like, yeah, I'm struggling with the Bible. I'm like, okay, why? They're like, I just don't know if I'm more of a new earth creationist or an old earth. There's evidence that speaks to, the Bible being, or the earth being old, but then I'm looking at this and archaeology, and I'm like, okay, cool. I feel that. I'm like, so how much of the Bible have you read? None of it. Oh, okay. Where'd this come from? I was watching this YouTube video. And then it's more I'll talk about, and they're struggling with pornography. And of course, God has thoughts on that. And so it's just easier to dismantle the whole thing versus have to change and grow on your end. And it's just like, fam, you're trying to argue this creation narrative. Because here's the thing. Let's say you demolish Christianity and you move on to something else, whatever faith, pick one. You still have a creation story. You still have that problem of creation, and you still have something that you have to answer, whether it's questions with the afterlife. That was part of, the brother, my guy McDaniel, and I hope you're here, fam. If you are, speak up. But he was talking about how he left Christianity, and he's still coming back trying to figure things out. And he was trying to figure out if hell was a real place or not, like on the call. And I'm like, I actually kind of like that question. I do, and I do think there's a lot of relevancy to it. Not with where he's at, though. Not with where he's at. It's like there are so many things, and we don't realize that how practical the Bible is. That's the basis on why we did the Truth Project, y'all, is to make this thing way more practical, because way too many people think that their spiritual walk and purpose is this thing that just happens every now and then. Like, let's back up for a little bit, y'all. The creator of the entire cosmos. When I'm saying cosmos, think of just like the order of everything, not just the universe, but even spiritually, like all of the order of allness was created by this being that is so strong and so amazing. But purpose is something that we feel like every now and then, like twice a year, when you get a good promotion at work, every now and then a little bit at church, only if the music was good and the pastor was on point. But outside of that, you're just waiting and looking for purpose. And I think instead, every moment, if you would just wake up, God is showing something to you. God is revealing something. God is doing something. And the Bible speaks to that. Like, it's not just when the Red Seas part that God is alive and moving, and it's like, man, he's in your day to day. And when you can really internalize your spirituality to that level, I think it changes the game completely. And you don't ask the questions that so many people are like, even my dude that, like, I'll talk to people that are struggling with creation stories. Not only do they not read the Bible, they haven't even read Genesis. They haven't read the first 3 chapters that are talking about this. And it's like, why? Get off TikTok, brother. Like, you're frustrating me. Like, and so that is just one thing I wanted to throw in there. Like, sometimes we go to the deep things to try to cover something else up. Maybe you're just really mad at God because your brother died. I've seen stuff like this, and it's like you've never been able to really reconcile that in your head. So there's got to be something wrong. And so you go to all these deep arguments that when we get real, you don't even really understand them. Like, most of the deep arguments, y'all, I promise you can't answer it in one TikTok, because there's so many layers, and it's so easy to go on TikTok and ramble on something, and you have no scholarly sources, and people just take it and leave it. I've seen so many wild things. I don't know the science enough to know this, but I've been watching my guy, who was the guy getting cooked on Joe Rogan?
Getting cooked?
Yeah, my dude, the light-skinned brother, Terrence Howard. Did you see that? He went on Joe Rogan, and I guess was talking crazy. And I love Joe. Joe was like, cool, I'm gonna get like the right people in the room. And our brother that really knew the science, he seemed like he felt so bad, but he was just cutting down everything Terrence said, because he's like, dude, it's different when you're really in the lab and you do this versus, just putting a couple videos together on YouTube. And we just got to be very, very careful, man. Like, almost pick any topic you want in the Bible. There's people that have dedicated multiple decades. I'm talking 20, 30, 40 years of their career only studying that. Only studying one book of the gospel. Only studying Deuteronomy, looking at all the archaeological evidence, traveling back, like mastering Hebrew, and then you gassed up off of a 12-year-old's 12-second TikTok. It's like there's more to it. So just make sure we're not running around trying to be deep to cover real issues.
Yeah, I appreciate you touching on that. That's a good catch there for sure. Hope that was helpful, Kilowan, or Young Spook actually. Kilowan followed up with the last one. He said, "What would you say to the people that argue that if Jesus and God are real, why does He allow the terrible things to happen in the world?" This is a very deep, very deep. So I'm only going to give.
We'll touch the surface. No, don't we have a series on this? I feel like at some point we got series on everything. I don't know if we touched this.
We have touched this in multiple Truth Project episodes. But if we covered one specifically, like on a topic, I think we do.
Okay.
But I can look that up and just drop it in the Discord for anybody who wants to catch it. Man, I think in order for God to be God, there has to be an allowance of both good and evil to happen. I would put it in this way. There's only 4 kinds of worlds that God could have created if God is going to be God. Could have created an amoral world. Amoral just simply meaning that nobody does any good or any bad, rather. It's just everybody's doing good, right? We're robotic. Okay. God could have simply not created us at all. That's a choice. And God could have created a world that we are in today where there's choice between good and evil. And God could have created a world where there was... That's crazy. I always forget this last one. I'll bring it up again because it's from Ravi Zacharias. I used to have it down packed and I don't know more. But, oh, hold on. I might have found it. Hang in there with me. Haha. Yep. An amoral world where there's no good or evil. Okay. So I misquoted there. There's no good or evil in the amoral world. He doesn't create one at all. A world where we only choose good. And a world where what we have today, a presence of choice between good and evil. Here's where this type of world is the only one that God would actually sign up for, because love is a choice. And there's free will in the mixture of the humanity that He's created for us to choose Him and to do right, or to choose ourselves and do what we want. Even at the crossroads of our decisions impacting other people intentionally or unintentionally. And so for love to be what it is, a world like we live in today must exist where there's a choice between that. Now, let me answer that in another way by also suggesting to you that what is almost assumed in that same question is, God could have easily stopped this and that from happening in my life. And the fact that He didn't shows that He doesn't care, isn't present, and doesn't love me. But here's where I think we get it twisted is I think if we were to say that God, let's just say, hit and runs, drive-bys, all the worst kinds of things. If God was to put Himself in a position to stop every harmful thing from happening in one place, He'd have to do it in another. He'd have to do it all across the board. The problem with that is that I think in that instance of thinking, we are actually putting ourselves in the throne seat of God, playing God, right? That we're taking control of the unseen, and we're taking control of a lot of actions and reactions that are happening all across life. And so what I think is a better way of living is actually just suggesting that not only is God knowing of all, God is everywhere, God is all powerful, all those kinds of words that we'll throw into. But God, there's nothing that happens without God knowing about it, and Him intervening in everything actually turns us into robots and not allowing us the room to do what he's designed us to do, which is make decisions, be thinkers, move and have our being in the rightful design that we've been created. And so even though evil things happen and good and evil, right, is all present in the world, it's the only kind of world in existence where love is possible. And love is the greatest ethic that we could ever have and experience in this life. And it actually requires this type of world we live in for it to be present. And more importantly, for us to choose to love God every day, for us to choose to love and pursue him and experience him in a way that we actually have the capacity to due to how he's designed us. I think that it would be my initial approach to such a question. And it goes so deep. But I just think instead of playing God, man, we abide and move with God. Not to say that as a result, nothing bad will happen, but it's just what it presents to us. And it's an opportunity to experience him and experience his love. And his love supersedes all evil and all kinds of death and wrongdoing that we will experience on this side of life, knowing his love and presence is the only thing that remains on the other side of eternity. That's kind of my initial one on that. But again, it goes really deep. So D, did you have anything on that, man? Oh, he finding it.
Yeah, there we go.
There it is.
Nah, nothing killed that. And that's the most basic and direct way we can answer that.
Yeah, bro, that thing goes so deep, man. Yeah.
Probably maybe the only thing we add is that we do empathize with how tough that of a question that is. Mm-hmm. One thing I would note too, sometimes people will pin that on like God. That's a tough, no matter what your worldview is, that's just a tough experience that we deal with. No matter what faith, religion, worldview you have, it's just difficult. So we empathize with it. But yeah, Grape's answer, he's right, good stuff.
Appreciate it. Did the best right there. NIL Menzel asked this. So I've never been brought up on it or taught anything about it. I started praying every night. And I got a Bible and started reading it. Is there anything else I should be doing or start kind of overwhelmed and just don't know if I'm doing it right or wrong? He did get some help from McDuggets. He said there isn't a right or wrong way. Everyone's journey is different to their interpretation. Hopefully you've been around for a lot, but we talked about the Faith Factory. I think that's a wonderful place for you to start, man. There's so many tools and resources for you to just get a glimpse at, to be able to start applying in your journey.
Exclamation notes in the chat, get access to today's notes and all those resources like the Faith Factory. Yeah. That
would probably be where I would park it at, honestly, there. And again, I think I can agree with McDuggets in the sense that there is no right or wrong way. It is a journey, and God, and I think you just starting where you are, and be where you are. Like, don't walk around, start using Christianese and Bible language. And, I read the Book of Psalms this morning, and Job, right. Job told me, though he slay me, nah, just be where you are, and go on that journey. But yeah, I would say the Faith Factory for sure.
Yeah. I'm gonna add a little caveat because I think Grape and my guy McDuggets are assuming that you are doing some things right, because they're not wrong in saying that there's a variety of ways of doing it. Because someone may say, so for example, if you check the Faith Factory, I like to start people off in the Book of John. Okay. And I have a little reading plan that I usually suggest. There are many, 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 many mighty men of God that have came before me and that are so much better than me, and better men than I will ever be, that didn't follow that reading plan. Okay. They didn't start in John. They might have started at Genesis. They could have started at Deuteronomy. Doesn't matter. It's similar to like basketball, right? You may say, how do you become a better basketball player? Maybe some people started with defense, worked on shots, whatever. There's no necessarily spots you have to start, but I do think there is a wrong way to do it, in the sense that you might have to watch back some of the calls and how we talked about how you could be doing this in a very selfish way. And especially if you're brand new and you just grabbed a Bible and you're winging it, you could be interpreting things very poorly. You can't be doing some things wrong. And unfortunately, I think we have a lot of people. I would argue that the majority of the people in the church actually have the wrong heart towards it, like a very selfish and immature approach. How do I know? Just go to church. Go to church and talk to the people there, man. A lot of people aren't reading their Bible. They're not really trying to grow. And I just would hate for you to jump into that. Like, I feel like we are, okay, I'm gonna be quick with this, but I feel like one of the things that's frustrating for me when I look at the church is that I think we have accepted like this slow path of spirituality where you kind of go to church once a week, you kind of play this game, you have your fun, you're young, and then you have the life crisis. Then you kind of slow down, take life serious, take God a little bit, take him serious. And then you're 50, 60, 70, and then you're learning things like how to be kind and patient and overcome your perversion.
Jesus.
And it's like and we waited to live, man. We waited. And I think some of the things that we think are lifetime struggles, and I think I think some of them are like, y'all ain't gonna like this. Y'all ain't gonna like some of this. I think some of the things that we battle with over a lifetime, I think if we really read the Bible, embrace some of the things it's saying, we could drop them in a weekend. Yeah,
bro.
Like it could be like, and it's like, dude, people are like, yo, am I just gonna struggle with this my whole life? This anger, this, that. I'm like, no, brother, but it's because, it's even changed. Like, I wish I would have known some of this when I first started having kids, but it's changed how I parent. Like, I don't think these kids should be reaching adulthood and they haven't read the Bible. Like, my kids have a lot of time on their hands, y'all. I'm about to have a 13-year-old, 11, 10, and 5, right?
Wow.
And they're homeschooled. Even if your kids aren't homeschooled, like, they have time, y'all. What are you prioritizing in your kids, in your life, to the point where I was one of the men that was a full-fledged grown man and I couldn't even say I had read the whole Bible. I didn't know what was in it. It just is such a low priority in our culture. And even trying to wrestle and understand these things, it's like stuff we start doing when we're 30 and we're like, life gets real. And I think these are things we need to know how to do at a young age before we know how to TikTok and all this crazy stuff we fill our mind with. And so when you move that way, I think we'd be a lot more free as Christians and a lot more powerful. We'd have some of the power that we're reading in the Bible. So yeah.
Listen to that for sure. I refer to all of that. Yeah. You start in the Bible, I don't think you can go wrong. Obviously you could read the Bible wrong too, but the Bible is always the best starting space for real. So I ain't even gonna add to that. Y'all take what he just said there. And there was a YouTube question by TJ Shapudin. He says, I've never been in one of these lives. I don't know if you guys take questions. Of course we do. I've been struggling with weed edibles that began to be used for sleep, but quickly went off the rails. Thoughts?
What do you mean by that? So I'm guessing just addicted. You're using them. You feel like you had a more medicinal or maybe healthy version of using it, and then now it's off the rails. I would say that same for any of that stuff, not just anyone that's on edibles, but anyone that's. So in our community, like in our coding community, we are so mindful that we just want to know, even down to the nuances, like what things make you not okay, and throw not like everything you can think of, from anger to constipated, annoyed, horny, all of that is not okay. Like if you're just not at peace, anything that pushes you over that line, I think we should be mindful of, and we need to know why. And so the issue isn't in the edibles. The issue is in why aren't you okay? So let's say, and I think that's a healthy question to even ask for your sleep, because if you're just throwing the edibles on top of maybe too much screen time, you might have some stress that's just built up because you got open loops, things you got to handle in your real life that's keeping you up, just, maybe too much caffeine in the evening. Like all of these things could be causing that, and you're just trying to put a big bandage over it. And in that same way, in the physical, I think we need to think through emotionally, like, why do you, so let's say it's the middle of the day and you're like, yo, I'm popping these edibles. Why? That's what I want you to be mindful of. Why are you not okay? I don't want to answer for you, but whatever that is, that's what we're really addressing. We can insert pornography for someone. It's not the porn problem. It's why aren't you okay? Like, why do you need to go to that? What is that a response? Is it a stress response? There's something just as simple too, is like when you're horny and you have that sexual energy, y'all, that's the energy you need to work with. You need to learn how to transmute that. Just like we were talking about anger earlier. That's something that clearly got wired for your body to feel. What do you do with that though? Can you transmute that energy into something better than just leaving it there as that base anger? And so that's what I would say in terms of like a full blown, like step by step, what you do. Use exclamation notes. You'll get the notes from today. At the bottom, there's a resource section. I would start with the Infinite XP. That'll kind of break down how I see things. You have a mind, you aren't your mind. You have emotions, you aren't your emotions. And when you can see them and understand them, you can navigate them a little bit better versus getting lost in them. And I'll give you guided meditations, guided journals to help with that. We also have a free community in there. You can go through that, post your check-ins in the community. I'll see them. I can help you with them. But that'd be my answer in short. Just don't idolize the edibles. It's not the edibles. There's something before that. What you think, Great?
Yeah, I just think the question we should always ask ourselves is why. I mean, just in and out, man. I think hopefully that's been a theme that you guys have caught on throughout the whole stream, and questions that we've been answering and things that we've just been addressing. Like, yeah, idolatry in and of itself, man, again, it's something that we are pursuing in a fulfillment of. We're pursuing for a feeling. We're pursuing to get to a place of peace. And the idolatry comes into play when we begin to pursue that thing more than we pursue God. And so the question is why. It's not to condemn. It's not to destroy you. It's not to do any of that. It's just we got to understand these things. I am so glad that I have grown away from a very church perspective, where a very churchified perspective, I should say, where instead of helping me with applicability on how to navigate through it, you just tell me pray about it. Like, yo, I don't care. I had a thought like this when I was walking back from the crib and from the gym this morning. You can't pray out of a poor budget. you can't pray out of lustful things, man. Like you just can't. You have to go through some experiences. Now, again, I'm not saying God can't just miraculously take some things and take your taste for some things, man. I don't put it above God. God can. I just think majority of the day-to-day cases that I think you should put yourself in ready to expect is like, I'm gonna have to fight. I'm gonna have to put up a fight. I'm gonna be tempted. I'm gonna engage in some things that I'm gonna want to run back to what I'm used to find comfort in. And I gotta be willing to just sit in the uncomfortability and allow my flesh to die in this moment. And I think it just starts with asking why. And so I think when you identify that, man, I think you're gonna start, it's gonna get harder to unsee it. And so when you go to it, you're gonna be like, man, this is what I'm really wrestling with. What else can I turn to that is actually more productive with the energy I'm about to put into this? Because as D said, I think sleep is what we're saying it is, but there's more to it. There's more to it. So that would be my beginning thought to that. So but I thought you answered that really well, D, for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you saw? If so, we got to do a lightning round. I know it's getting late, y'all. For anyone that's struggling, we're going to wrap it up. We'll do lightning.
For sure. Yeah, we'll do a lightning round here. I believe Fisher had a question at the bottom. He said, people can be hypocrites, I notice. People be like, why God allow this evil? Did God force you to lie yesterday? And if he forcefully stopped you from lying, and that means you get into trouble, will you say God is fair then? If God forced you not do the bad things you want to do, would that make you follow him? Oh, okay. So he was kind of just adding on to some of those thoughts. Okay. Yeah. And he kind of continued on moving forward. So maybe we don't have any more questions. I don't think I see any more. Beautiful. Yeah. It's cooking even though his blinds looking like bro, chill out on my blinds, man. I don't know what's wrong with that set. I ain't even gonna hold you.
Buddy talked about getting into meditation. There's tons of apps, man.
Oh, okay.
There's a bunch. Honestly, I think you should start doing some of the links we have in the resources, man. So Infinite XP, check out the Man Enough Challenge. That's 16 weeks of meditations, but Infinite XP probably the best one. But you guys can check out apps. What have I used in the past? There's Headspace. There's the Calm app. If you want a Christian one, there's Abide. So they'll have like guided, biblical meditations. There's probably a few more. Might even be some better ones now, but those are great ones. They'll have plans for you. You do them every day, track your progress. It's not deep though, buddy. Trust me. There's a lot of people that try to overcomplicate it. In the programs I got, you'll see it's super simple but impactful.
Yeah, I second all that. I think, Dion definitely put me on the game to the meditation, and then I ain't left it. It's amazing. So that's a W right there. I think that's it, man. No more questions in the chat, man. So I think we're good. Wait, here it is. Hold on, David. I think. How in the world can my emotions be an idol, and why? How can I stop clinging to the things? Okay, that might have been an answer. Never mind. Okay, yeah, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Man. So thank you guys so much for another amazing night. Tonight was an amazing conversation. I hope you guys got a lot out of it. And again, I hope what's the chance? I don't have no chances. Let me tell you that, Twist. I'm not even in it. That brother smacked me so bad out of that. I don't want to come back.
Oh yeah, I'm nice, Nick. Nigga, I'd probably dog yo Shaggy. I ain't even gonna hold you.
He lying. So yeah, tonight was good, man. We appreciate you guys so much.
Homework. I have it in the document. Yeah. If you check at the end. Cool. So basically, I just put 2 stories in there, y'all. There's not for you to go read. We have the golden calf. All right. This is a story where you guys will see. And if you guys aren't familiar with the Bible, you haven't read, I included some paragraphs that gives you context of what you're going to read, but actually go in the Bible and read it. So you'll see one of, a more negative example of idolatry there. And then there's an example of Daniel in the furnace where you'll see he didn't bow to the idol and God was there for him. So I think you guys should check those out, 2 kind of contrasting images. You guys could easily read that in a week, but if you sit down in an evening, you can get it done, and I think it'll complement today. And then also check the notes. There is 10 questions on there that I added. That's great for you guys to meditate. Buddy, you said you want to practice some meditation. Look at some of those questions, set a timer for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and just go through those questions and think about them like intently in the circle of truth, being honest. Like, that's meditating. Okay. That's it, sir. Y'all. About to get up out of here.
Love it. So you guys check that out. Come back and share your thoughts on from the homework, as usual, for next week. And we are excited to catch you guys for next week's conversation, and invite somebody, share the link, share this one with somebody throughout the week, man. Good replay to catch. All right. So as always, until next time, be easy and be breezy. God first. God bless.